The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
Today's topic is life and death on the sidewalk, and I'm joined by Tammy O'Connor, who is a campaign leader for 40 Days for Life for a specific clinic here in Glendale. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so if you could just start telling us a little bit about who you are, your family, background, whatever you want to share on a personal level before we get started talking about our topic today.
Okay. I've been married to my husband, Sean, for 31 years now. We have 2 adult children, a boy and a girl, still call them boys and girls, and a 2-year-old granddaughter. She's like the light of my life.
Yes.
I work at a veterinary clinic. I've done that all my life as well. So there's that aspect. And then I've been involved with pro-life since 2010.
Wow.
So we'll get into that story too.
Yeah, that's amazing. So this is, as you guys, anybody who's listened to this or knows me knows that the life issue is just near and dear to my heart. It's been something that I have talked a lot about and done a lot with. But this is a piece of it that we haven't talked about before on the podcast. So it's nice to have you here. For people who may not know, well, first of all, how did you get involved in the life arena? What led you to be involved in that?
So abortion is part of my story. Over 25 years ago, I had my own. It's actually what led me to repentance in Christ.
Wow.
I know afterwards I just felt the depression and the pain. And for the first time in my life, I felt a real danger of hell. I know it's not fashionable to talk about hell these days, but that's what I was feeling. I knew what I did was very bad, and that's what I deserved. But that's when God reached down to me. I mean, I was just begging for forgiveness. Hell was an acceptable answer to me, being separated from God, because I did grow up in faith. And he reached down to me and he showed me that's why Christ had to die on that cross, because I couldn't be a good enough person in my own strength, no matter how hard I tried. And that's when he became real and personal to me. He didn't die for all those people 2,000 years ago. He just didn't die for all those other sinners out there. He died for me because I'm a sinner. And so I found a good Bible-believing church. I was baptized and just totally sold out. Wanted to live my life for him, and I was very active in evangelism, international mission trips. I taught Sunday school, all these things, but I had this deep, dark secret that I didn't want anyone to know about, and that continued on for about 7 years. At the same time, God was laying on my heart to do something in the pro-life movement, but like a lot of people, I had no idea what to do, but I really felt like I needed to give back in the area where I fell. And so I started helping at the local pregnancy center, and that was good, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. I really wanted to stand up against this evil of abortion because I knew the lies that I believed that led me to the abortion clinic. I knew the pain it caused. I'll never forget my Sunday school teacher gave me a flyer for 40 Days for Life, invited me out to the sidewalk to just pray for an hour. And so I did. I thought, this is great. I love to pray, and nobody would know why I'm out there. So I went on a Friday, which is abortion day in Memphis, at the Planned Parenthood, and it was abortion day. So seeing those girls going in, knowing what they were about to do, how it was going to affect them, how it grieved God's heart. I was just broken. I was undone. Tears everywhere. So God showed me 2 things on the sidewalk that day. He showed me I had a calling for pro-life ministry and that I need more healing to do that. So I did seek post-abortion counseling. I went through training to be a post-abortion counselor myself. I still do that. Counsel with women who have gone through this. And I just started sidewalk counseling. So that's where we try to talk to the women going into the clinic and offering them other choices besides the ones they're going to make. I also started working as an advocate on the mobile ultrasound unit. And so we moved here to Arizona in 2016, and I started with 40 Days for Life at Glendale. That's the closest to me. I live up in the Prescott area, so I'm a little ways away.
Yeah.
But it's worth the drive to go down and stand for life and see women change their hearts and minds about abortion.
Yeah. Oh, that's such an amazing story. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. There's just a number of things that one of the things I think is important to is that I think there's a misperception that people who grow up in the faith aren't the ones necessarily that are choosing abortion, but in my experience, it's half and half. I mean, all of the post-abortion groups that we've done, half of the women grew up in some sort of faith, and half of them come to Jesus because of a lot of times because of their grief and their pain from having had an abortion, having never had a faith. And so it's a really mixed bag as far as that goes. And the other thing that really stood out to me when you were talking is how many women that work in the pro-life, this is the thing that, one of the things that drives me crazy, is when you hear the words from the pro-abortion crowd that want to say it's men, right? That are men are trying to tell women what to do with their bodies, which is, if you are in the pro-life world, as you and I both are, that is so ridiculously false, because 90% of the people that are working in the pro-life world are women, first of all. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
And so many of them have a story like what you're talking about. Either they had an abortion or had an unplanned pregnancy that they chose to keep, and they had a baby when they were young, and they know what it's like, and they have a story that makes them want to help other women that were in a similar situation to what they were. Do you find that to be?
I do. And my favorite thing to do on the sidewalk when I see new people out there is just ask them why they're out there, because everyone has a story, like you said, and it's for a lot of different reasons. Some are just staunchly pro-life. They grew up in faith and they just really believe this is against God's will, and that's true, but a lot of them are post-abortive. A lot of them had children in very difficult circumstances, so they want to share that even though it's a hard decision, it's a possible decision. So, I love to hear their stories on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it really is true. It's such a, when you see comments, and I'm thinking, they have clearly never been in any kind of pro-life group. It is largely women that are involved, which I think is just it's the way the enemy works, right? He lies about everything. So I love that. That's a wonderful story. And so you eventually got involved with 40 Days for Life. Excuse me. And I don't know how many people are familiar. I mean, if you're in the pro-life arena, you're familiar with 40 Days for Life. But can you just explain what 40 Days for Life does? Just kind of on a high level. So
we take the 40-day model, the biblical model, and we run 40-day campaigns in the spring and fall. So we do it twice a year. And this one, the spring campaign runs current with Lent. So it'll start on Ash Wednesday and end the week before Easter. And we just dedicate time to pray outside of the abortion clinics. And we're praying specifically to end abortion and specifically for that place to shut down. And it's a grassroots movement, so it's in over 1,000 communities around the world. Usually there's about anywhere from 600 to 700 per campaign that are taking place. And very grassroots in that we're concentrating on your own local abortion clinic, right? Not all of us can go to Washington, D.C. and lobby, but we can go to our local abortion clinic and stand for life there. And very interesting. Would you like to hear how it started?
Yes, I would love to.
So it started in Bryan, College Station. A Planned Parenthood abortion clinic was opening there in 1998. Despite the community protesting and
is Bryan the Abby Johnson's, right?
Yes,
the one that Abby Johnson was at. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And so, despite all that, the abortion clinic opened, and their abortion numbers, they were doing pretty good business. Their abortion numbers were rising. So the Brazos Valley Coalition of Life decided they would just lock themselves away for 24 hours and pray, ask God what they want to do about this or what He wants to do about this. And they came up with the 40-day model. So they decided they were going to run a 40-day campaign at the Bryan College Station Clinic, and they did 24/7. So they were there 24 hours a day for 40 days. And it was very successful there. And then, as you mentioned, that was the clinic that Abby Johnson came out of. So that was 2004 when they held the first one. And then other places around the country heard about it, and they wanted to do that at their clinics. And then in 2007, it went national, opened up around the country, and then went globally around the world at abortion clinics. Abby Johnson, as you know, that was a big story. So she saw an ultrasound-guided abortion, and that had her have a change of heart. And she turned to the 40 Days for Life people when she left the clinic for help. If you haven't seen the movie Unplanned.
Or read the book. I read the book before I saw the movie.
Yeah, it has
when it
more
first
details.
came out. And the book really, I think, talks more about her relationship with those people than the movie really gives you. I mean, the movie's wonderful, but they did a really good job with it, I thought. But the book goes into a lot more detail of her relationship with those people who were praying outside of her clinic. Which it's such a great, I wasn't even thinking about that when I was prepping for this, but that's a great tie-in with this to see the power of what can happen when you're praying outside of a clinic.
Yeah. And they didn't emphasize 40 days in the movie. It was more about Abby's conversion and her coming out. But that's basically how 40 Days for Life got started. If you watch the movie Unplanned, it started at that clinic. And so they prayed for her for 5 years, and then she came out, and then that clinic closed in 2013. And 40 Days for Life now owns it. It's their headquarters.
Oh, wow.
So they repurposed it for a good cause. I visited there several times. They have a big memorial for the unborn in their back courtyard, and just a beautiful place.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. That's pretty cool. That the redemption of that building, right? Yeah. And 40 Days for Life is a mixed faith, right? So it's Catholic and Protestant, and you just sign up for a slot, right? Like you sign up for, it's not 24/7 now. It's like 7 a.m. to...
Yeah, we do 12 hours a day. So we do 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Glendale. Family Planning Associates, the Phoenix campaign, because we have 3 in the area, they do theirs 365. So they during 40 days, they still cover 7 days a week, but the rest of the time of the year, they do business days at at Family Planning Associates.
Family Planning. And you were saying that's a later term abortion.
Yes, and they used to do them up to 20 weeks, which that was Arizona law at the time.
24,
before Roe, and then after Roe, it's 24 weeks now for viability. So we're actually in a little worse position than we were to begin with, but God answers prayer, so we're still hopeful for him to turn things around.
Well, and really, whether it's legal, I mean, obviously I want it to be legal, but we also want to reach women, what you're talking about, because I think there's so many women, and I know this from doing post-abortion Bible studies, so many of the women felt pressured or coerced or felt like they had no other option at the time. And they weren't necessarily sure of what they were doing. I mean, sometimes they felt really sure about what they were doing, but other times they really were not very sure. And so when you have an option that's presented to them in that crisis moment, because they're vulnerable and pregnant and scared and people, upset with them or they're afraid to talk to somebody or whatever that the case is for that particular woman, to have someone out praying and offering hope is a huge thing. I just, again, being in the life arena for such a long time, I've heard so many stories. We'll talk about some stories with you here in a minute. One of the things, so just to kind of go over a couple of just frame of reference, Arizona, I think, has 7. Do you know if that's correct? 7 abortion clinics in the whole state?
Well, there's 6 in the greater Phoenix area, and then there's Tucson. And Flagstaff has one that doesn't do surgical abortions.
Okay, so
they do
that
the
would
medication.
Be 8, then?
They just do medication abortion in Flagstaff. So 7 if you don't count that one.
Okay.
7 surgical abortions.
So 7 surgical abortion clinics, and then the abortion pill is really the big culprit right now. There's so many well over 50% of abortions are done by pill now. And it's technically it is against our state law for telemarket. I mean, telemarket, it is basically telemarket. Telemedicine. Telemedicine abortions to take place and for them to be shipped in the mail, but they still happen. So that's a really big, component of it, which can be tricky on the sidewalk, right? Because you don't necessarily know. I mean, they do come in for those pills, right?
They do. And a lot of women, even though they can get easier access by mail, still want to be supervised by some kind of medical person. And so they'll still go to a brick and mortar clinic to get the pill. So we do actually see quite a few on the sidewalk at Glendale. They have them take the first pill in clinic. And they're easy to spot coming out because they'll have the brown paper bag that carries the other pill. And they just have the most devastated looks on their faces because birth control can come out in the brown paper bags, but you're not devastated by birth control pills, right? They just see themselves as having killed their child because they took the first pill. And Planned Parenthood will coach them that abortion pill reversal is not safe, not possible, so there's no turning back. So we have to kind of overcome that when we talk to them when they're coming out. But we do give them the APR hotline number, tell them to call, tell them not to take the second pill. There is still hope, and that's what they need to hear, that there's still hope. And APR is successful in over 50% of the cases, so it's worth telling them about.
And even when it's not successful, there's no harm done in that. I mean, any more harm, right? Because if it's not successful, then the abortion will just complete.
Right.
But it's not going to do any damage for them to try to save that baby. We had and if you are listening to this, we did have an episode, I don't know, I can't remember what month it was, but with a nurse from Choices, and we specifically talked about abortion pill reversal. And all of that, so you can go back and listen to that as well if you're wondering about that. The other thing having to do with being on the sidewalk that I think people don't necessarily know about is that there are laws in different cities and places about how you have to be, where you're allowed to stand. All of those things are different in different places, but what is the protocol in like for the Glendale clinic there?
So it's pretty basic, the basic laws that apply. We can't block the driveways. We can't go onto their property at all. Glendale, a few years ago, painted these yellow lines along their sidewalk and we were able to stand those sidewalks and talk to women and be a little closer to them, but they went back to some plats from the 1960s and said, oh, this is part of our original property, so they can't stand on it. It's our private property. They were easements. It used to be a child care center, and so these easements were in place so that the children can get to the child care center. So they put yellow lines on parts of the sidewalk where we can't stand anymore. So that's a big thing, a big change that we had. If you've ever been out there, there's a wall, just like a half-size wall around the parking lot. Well, they planted huge bushes over or in front of the wall, and then they put a big screen on top of the wall to make it higher. And those are just proof that sidewalk counseling is effective out there because the women see the people out there. We actually get to talk to some of the women, and so they're trying to do everything they can to prohibit that because the more opportunities we have to reach them, the more chance they'll have to change their mind.
Right.
And you think they wouldn't, they're all about choice, right? So you would think they wouldn't be opposed to that, but the only choice they want them to make is abortion. They've even this past, a few months ago, added signs to both sides of the parking lot that said, do not stop to talk to protesters. Do not stop for the protesters.
Protesters,
so,
right?
yeah. So... And that's how a lot of people see us. That's okay. But we are protesting abortion. But our main goal is to witness to the women going in and letting them know this isn't their only choice that they have.
Well, and what I've said before is, Planned Parenthood is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So it's a bottom line for them, right? That if they don't come in and are able to sell an abortion to that woman, they're losing profit. They are a profit-driven,
Correct. Yeah.
multi-billion-dollar corporation. Which presents and pretends to be a nonprofit.
Right. They make a lot of profit.
They make a lot of profit. And even the things they don't give out, we had this conversation with pregnancy centers, but pro-life organizations will give all kinds of things for free, right? Free ultrasounds, free diapers, free parenting classes, free all of these things that are actually free, that they're not getting compensated for them, by the government, right? Their donors pay for those things. Whereas inside the abortion clinic, everything has a cost. And even if the woman is not paying it, someone is paying it. They're charging an insurance, or they have to pay a lower rate or something. So not to say that services, shouldn't be paid for in general, but it is a profit-driven business. And so to see that, obviously, that you guys are dipping into their bottom line.
And we try. I mean, most of those services, except for the abortion and birth control, they can get at a pregnancy center. And so that's what we tell them, that you can get these same services for free.
Right.
At a place that actually cares about you. And that's why they're doing it for free.
Because even like STD testing and those kind of things, like Choices offers that, I know, and some other places where you can get them, clinics that they offer that for low cost or for free. And you were talking about, so you're standing out there praying, talking to women, but considered protesters. And I know during the Biden administration, there were a lot of people who especially, so these were mostly sidewalk counselors, right, that were arrested under the FACE Act, which is
federal access
to clinic
entrances.
And which was supposed to be, protecting, quote, reproductive facilities and also churches, but they never have used it to protect pro-life pregnancy centers from attacks, like after the Dobbs decision, when they were vandalizing and throwing rocks in windows and setting fire bombs and things like that in pregnancy centers, pro-life pregnancy centers. And they haven't used it, like when we were talking about, although I think they are talking about with that church in I think it was in Minneapolis or Minnesota, where people were barging in the church. They were going to use that FACE Act. But during the Biden administration, there were a whole lot of pro-life sidewalk counselors, like what you're talking about, that were arrested as a federal offense, like they were terrorists, for standing out and either praying, trying to talk to women, preaching the gospel, and they're arrested as a federal offense, like a terrorist.
Yes, and usually after the fact, like the FBI SWAT team's going to head to their home, kick in the door, and arrested them. And that was kind of what was crazy about that. But it's not the first time we saw the weaponization of our government agencies. Obama used the IRS to go after pro-life activists, audited them, But then Biden, especially the year 2022, when Roe was overturned, is when we saw all of that, when the DOJ was weaponized. And many people that I knew were arrested. And, I had to get to the point, well, am I going to be arrested? I'm peaceful. I'm not very confrontational in my approaches out there. But it was a concern, and we actually had 40 Days for Life, sent out emails, and if law enforcement questions you, ask for your list, you need to let us know. 40 Days for Life does have its own legal team, and it was started because of that, because of the DOJ being weaponized. They used to refer out to other organizations like ADF and Thomas More Society, but they decided it was time to have their own because of all of that. So if we have, it's our First Amendment right to be on the sidewalk. It's a public sidewalk. We can be there. We can talk to people as long as we're not endangering anybody. And we do have peace statements that we sign.
Those prayers are dangerous.
Yeah, they are. They move mountains. So
yeah,
and it's effective. That's why they go after us so much.
That's why they don't want you there, and they want to throw people in prison, right? Yeah.
Right.
That's that's interesting. I wondered. I didn't that makes sense that 40 Days for Life would have to address that, especially after what's gone on. I hadn't talked about it on here, but I posted a lot watching, because there were people that I knew that I followed that were being thrown in jail, in prison, federal prison. You know, a mom with 2 little kids, and like these are poster board of women out there trying to, like what you're talking about, share, don't go down the road that I went down.
Right.
And they're being thrown in prison for doing that. But again, if we're being thrown in prison for the cause of Christ, like that's
right.
That we may come to that point as believers where that has to be what we face, right?
And most of them were pardoned last year, last January.
They were pardoned after President Trump got into office. That was one of the first things he did, was pardon all those. I was really glad to see that. Pardoned all of those people that had been unduly, wrongly arrested under that FACE Act. But again, it's still there, so someone else could come and weaponize it later, or state governments too can weaponize that. I mean, because that what you're talking about with the sidewalk law, that is an Arizona statute. Different states have different rules about where you're allowed to stand.
Right. The U.S. Constitution, or the Supreme Court, I should say, has ruled that buffer zones are illegal.
Yeah.
So we cannot have buffer zones. They try to squeeze that as much as they can. I know I sidewalk counseled in New York, and that was just a totally different animal. It's like, because their abortion clinics are right on the city sidewalk in the street, and they drop them off at the they drop them off right in front of the door, and you can actually go right up to the door. I think it's only like a 10-foot. You can't be within 10 feet of the actual entrance. So I could see inside the building. And just talk to these girls all the way up to the door.
Wow.
And that was a new experience. That was pretty interesting. It was like watching a basketball match. I wasn't real active because I was trying to just watch and see what they do.
What people were doing.
But the sidewalk counselors would just go up to the car doors, and the clinic escorts are there too. And it's like a guard. They're just blocking each other, and it was really interesting.
Well, and that's the other thing that we didn't mention, because people may not realize that, but the abortion clinics, when they have, specifically on abortion days, I don't know if they're there other days, but they have, what do they call them? The people that, like the guards, you were saying. That, what
the escorts.
Escorts. I don't know why that word just vanished from my brain, but they have what they call escorts that come out, meet women at their car, and walk them to, so that they are not, again, to try to prevent them from talking to the sidewalk counselors or being distracted by the people that are praying, because they don't want them to think about what they're doing or reconsider their decision to go in and have that abortion.
They're very extreme in how they do that too. Can you imagine a woman, lowest point of her life, she's making a very difficult decision, she thinks it's her only choice, and she's very down and conflicted about this, and pulls in the parking lot, and you have these 4 escorts in rainbow vests and rainbow umbrellas just swamp your car, tell you to come out. They're blocking with the umbrella. They block the view of us. If we try to talk to them, they'll spin their umbrellas around. They're trying to talk to her about anything, the weather, whatever's going on, to keep her from us. They used to play very loud, raunchy music on their radios. They've toned that down a bit because it's pretty tacky, the things they play, and the people in the apartments surrounding the building get very upset about that. So usually when there's a noise ordinance call, it's usually on the escorts and not us, but they'll blame us, even though it's their radios that are being very loud and obstructive. But the escorts have toned down quite a bit. They used to be even more aggressive than they are now. They pretty much just stick to getting the women in. They used to come and confront us a lot, and they're probably told not to now, because there has been some issues with that in the past.
Yeah. And that sidewalk advocacy, you said this, but I just want to kind of highlight this, that goes on all year. There are people who are out on the sidewalk every day in front of Planned Parenthood. Like I know for that Glendale clinic, it's probably true of other clinics as well. So even though 40 Days for Life is a specific targeted campaign where people sign up, and anybody can sign up, we'll put it's 40daysforlife.com.
And specific to Glendale, it's -Glendale AZ.
And it's the number 40.
Yes,
right?
number
So
40.
40daysforlife.com. And we'll link it in the show notes as well, so that if you are interested in signing up for that, it's a really great way to just go down, and they tell you what to do, and you sign up for however many shifts you want to go down and pray outside the clinics. And it's a really great way to kind of step your toe into that water if you've never done anything like that before. I've been out there during 40 Days for Life.
I tell people that's where you should start. If you don't know what to do, just go out to the sidewalk and pray. And people will say, well, I can pray from anywhere, but the ministry of presence is very powerful. If you watch or read the book Unplanned, Abby Johnson will tell you that the no-show rates will go up 75%, as high as 75% if people are out on the sidewalk praying.
Wow.
Because God's already told these women it's wrong. And when they see people outside the clinic, it's like a confirmation for them, and they'll just drive home. They won't keep their appointment. They won't even tell anybody. We won't know that a life was saved, but we hear it enough on the sidewalk. Women will come back by and tell us, I was going to have an abortion here a couple years ago, and people were here, so I didn't. And they'll show us pictures of their babies, and it's beautiful. We hear it all the time.
I love that. And I'm going to have you share a story. But with that, when they have these sidewalk, they have resources. Occasionally, there's a mobile unit there available, and otherwise they have information to send them to a nearby clinic that will help them and get them the care that they need. So they do have those practical resources available, not just praying, but they have that stuff that's handed out when women decide to come talk to.
Right. Because when you go out to pray, you're literally taking light to the darkness.
Yes.
And when you do that, God's going to put people in your path. You might not have any intention to talk to anybody, but they'll see you praying, and a lot of times will come up to you for help because you're the only sign of hope out there.
Yeah.
And they respond to that.
I love that. Well, that's why I chose the title of Life and Death on the Sidewalk. I thought, because it really is. It's a matter of life and death out there. And those simple acts of praying can have a huge impact on that. So what's a story that you have of someone who did change their mind?
So just a simple one to start to tie up with the praying. I had actually taken some friends of mine down from Prescott with me, and we huddled up and we prayed. And as soon as we opened our eyes, this lady walks up to us because she's seen us praying, and she said, I was going to go in there, I'm pregnant, to explore my options. So she was considering abortion, she told us, but I'm a Christian, and I saw you praying, and that's just confirmation to me that I can't do this.
Oh, wow.
And she wanted to let us know that, and she went to, we gave her information about the pregnancy resource centers, and so she followed up with them. But that's just a simple one. I had just last month, we had a beautiful African lady, beautiful African accent, come up to us. Me and one other person were praying, opened our eyes, and she's walking up to us. And she says, I'm a Christian, I'm pregnant. I only came here for a pregnancy test. And so we gave her information for Phoenix Women's Clinic. And she was going over there to get her pregnancy test. And I don't think she was abortion-minded, but you never know if they're going to Planned Parenthood because they are going to counsel them in that direction.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand that, again, they're going to hard sell you abortion if you walk in there. And so they think it's just, it's a clinic that helps women and does all this great stuff and free things for women. And they don't realize that they are peddling abortion. They're hard selling it to women. They don't offer prenatal services. They don't offer any of that other the help. You can't get diapers there. You can't get any help if you choose to continue the pregnancy. You only get help you don't get help if you change your mind about the abortion pill, and you don't get help if you've had an abortion and you need counseling. We were talking about that at the beginning. That counseling, they don't offer any of that either. It's only to sell abortion. But I think a lot of people don't realize that, and so they inadvertently walk in there because they do a really good job, a PR job of selling themselves, again, as a nonprofit that's just supporting women's choice and all of that, when we know the darker side of it and the truth about what they actually do. So, yeah, any other stories you want to share real quick before we...
Yeah, I'll do. But the very first save that I had in Arizona after moving here was actually at Family Planning Associates, which is actually even more difficult to Sidewalk Council than Glendale, I think, because they're in a medical building, an office in a medical building. So you have a lot of other clients going in there. They have a parking garage they park in, and they walk across the street. So you have to stand a pretty good ways off to talk to them going in. But this young couple actually rode the city bus in, so they came up the sidewalk, walking up the sidewalk with their beautiful 9-month-old in a stroller, going to go into the abortion clinic. And that was the reason. They were wanting an abortion because they just had a baby, so they didn't think they could take care of another one. And so we gave them encouragement, said there's a lot of help available for them, and that's all they needed to know. It wasn't difficult to talk them into life, because we're just built that way, to appreciate life. We just need some help sometimes. And so one of our other sidewalk counselors drove them over to Phoenix Women's Clinic, where they chose life. So
yeah, that's beautiful. And I think what you just said is really powerful, because I do think that, again, from just my experience in it, is that they know that it's a life, and they for the most part. You do have some women that are very hardened, and sometimes that's because they've had multiple abortions or abuse or whatever, and they're very hardened hearts. But otherwise, they just need hope. They need to know that they have help, and that they have hope, and for someone to say, you can do this. You can. It's hard. Any of the decisions are hard, but you can do it. And we're here to pray for you and love you. And there are places that offer, like I said, parenting classes, diapers, baby supplies, all kinds of things, that are resources that couples can have for that baby, and they just need that hope. It's hope is powerful.
And do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Because this one drives me, and it's a big reason why, even when it gets hard out there, that I keep going out, comes from the mobile ultrasound unit that I worked on. And I talked to Mama E. She was outside Planned Parenthood Memphis, and she's hanging outside of her car. So when they're hesitant like that, they're questioning their decision. So I went up and talked to her. And I said, I can tell you're having second thoughts. Why don't you just come and have an ultrasound and, give you a little more time to think about it and make sure this is what you want to do. And she went on the unit, and when she saw that ultrasound, that was it. The life decision was made. But in tears, she had just had an abortion the year before.
Oh.
She was going into college, so she had that abortion. Now she's a sophomore and pregnant again. That's why she was considering abortion again. And she said, where were you guys the last time? You know? And I see that, a lot of them that see their ultrasound that have had abortions before, and now they have a life-affirming ultrasound, and they're like, what have I done? They realize that was a life before too. And they just always, I wish somebody was out there. I wish you guys were there the first time. And I heard that so many times on the ultrasound unit. It just makes me want to be out there more. Most women are still going to choose abortion when you're out there. That's just the heartbreaking fact. But you are going to save some. And those, God moves heaven and earth to save some of these mamas and babies. Yeah. And if no one's out there, that's not going to happen. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I love that. That was a great story to end on. Thank you for just all the work that you're doing, and for coming and sharing your heart and sharing all of that. I'm so honored to have you here today. It was so great to talk to you. And go sign up for 40 Days for Life if you're listening, and we'll have that link there. And I'm really thankful that you were here today. So thank you for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify, and follow us on social media to find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.